Yeah, you can get good things like on a cymbal. Right? Things.
Can you give us an example of this kind of instrumental conversation?
On a cold South African morning in 2013, a 73-year-old ginger baker, once the most explosive drummer on earth, was found on the floor of his farmhouse, coughing blood, his lungs collapsing under decades of heavy smoking and chronic COPD. It had been barely a year since he survived open-heart surgery, and only months since he'd lost nearly 500,000 rand in a financial scandal that ended with a courtroom meltdown and headlines branding him the most dangerous man in music. His right hand still shook from 29 failed cold turkey attempts to quit heroin, and the metal-tipped cane he used for balance was the same weapon he had swung at a documentary director, shattering the man's nose on camera. Neighbors said they often heard him screaming at ghosts from a past filled with needles, betrayals, and unpaid debts. How did a man who once shaped the sound of rock end up here, broken, bankrupt, and battling the very body he had spent a lifetime destroying? Welcome to the untold stories of Ginger Baker. From the moment Ginger Baker slammed into London's jazz underground in the late 1950s, it was clear he wasn't built for moderation. By age 20, he was already playing 6 nights a week, tearing through drum kits so violently that club owners joked they should charge him equipment damage fees. His precision and aggression drew the attention of Graham Bond, leading to the Graham Bond organization, where Baker played more than 200 shows a year, fueling the amphetamine habits that would shadow him for decades. But everything detonated in 1966 when he, Eric Clapton, and Jack Bruce formed Cream. In just 2 years, the band sold more than 15 million records, performed over 300 concerts, and pushed Baker into global stardom. Yet behind the success was a war. Baker and Bruce clashed so often that some tours required separate transport to avoid violence. Baker's temper, triggered by exhaustion and a growing dependence on heroin, turned recording sessions into battlegrounds. By 1968, the band imploded at the height of its fame. Instead of stabilizing, Baker escalated. He burned through money on cars, horses, and drugs, drove 5,000 miles across the Sahara to escape both the British press and his own addictions, and poured nearly his entire fortune into the short-lived Barakota studios in Lagos. When the project collapsed, he was left with mounting debts and a worsening reliance on painkillers to manage his battered spine and arthritic hands. Even in his musical triumphs, the pattern was the same. Meteoric rise, violent rupture, chaotic exit. Bands dissolved, friendships detonated, and Baker's reputation hardened into a warning label: brilliant, volatile, and incapable of protecting anything he built. His downfall wasn't sudden. It was a slow, grinding erosion, one bad decision at a time. The real collapse of Ginger Baker didn't arrive in one dramatic explosion. It came as a chain of blows, each more devastating than the last, wearing his life down to the bone. By the mid-1970s, his heroin dependency had already consumed nearly 17 years of his life, and his attempt to outrun it by driving 5,000 miles to Nigeria only buried him deeper. Barakota Studios, his most ambitious project, drained an estimated $150,000 in today's value. And within 18 months, the entire compound was abandoned, his equipment stolen, his savings gone. He fled the country with barely a few £100s to his name. The next crash was personal. His marriage disintegrated, and his relationship with his 3 children fractured so violently that one of them later said they had 0 childhood memories without fear. When Ginger admitted he had given his teenage son Kofi cocaine at age 15, the family broke apart permanently. The fallout left him isolated, financially crippled, and emotionally unmoored. He relocated to Italy, living on a remote property with 300 olive trees, working from sunrise to sunset just to stay clean. And even then, he admitted to relapsing multiple times. By the 1990s, his body began rebelling.
Years of cigarettes, he often smoked 40 a day, had turned his lungs to paper. His back, weakened by arthritis, required medication strong enough to sedate most people. He survived on a cocktail of painkillers so potent that one doctor warned him he was one dose away from organ failure. But Baker dismissed it. He still believed he could outrun the damage. The next spiral came in South Africa. Desperate for stability, he invested heavily in a polo ranch, spending nearly R1 million on horses, training facilities, and upkeep. Within 5 years, the project collapsed under mismanagement and legal disputes. His bank accounts were drained, leading to the infamous scandal with Lindiwe Noko, who was convicted of fraud after withdrawing almost R500,000 from his account in court. Baker claimed he was penniless, surviving on a pension of $140 a week. Then came the moment that symbolized his unraveling to the world. During the filming of Beware of Mr. Baker, he struck director Jay Bulger across the face with a metal-tipped cane, breaking his nose instantly. The attack was recorded on audio, the blood visible on the floor. Instead of denying it, Baker smirked and muttered, "You should have filmed it." It became the defining image of a man who had lost control of everything but his rage. In 2013, the collapse turned physical. Diagnosed with COPD, degenerative osteoarthritis, and heart failure, he underwent emergency open-heart surgery. Doctors warned that even minor stress could kill him. Yet, weeks later, he was back on stage, barely able to breathe, hunched over his drum kit, playing through tremors. By the time his final years arrived, Ginger Baker wasn't fighting for fame, music, or legacy anymore. He was fighting to stay alive and losing ground every day. When the evidence is laid out, every relapse, every collapse, every burned bridge, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Ginger Baker's downfall wasn't triggered by a single catastrophe. It was the cumulative weight of nearly 2 decades of heroin, 29 failed withdrawal attempts, and a lifetime of rage shaped by trauma he never confronted. Financially, he lost more than $500,000 in the South African fraud case, poured the equivalent of $150,000 into a Nigerian studio that evaporated, and survived his final years on a pension that barely covered medication. Physically, his lungs were destroyed by 40 cigarettes a day, his spine eroded by decades of drumming, and his heart finally gave out after a series of operations doctors warned might not save him. The truth is cold. Ginger Baker didn't die because of one enemy. He died because every enemy, addiction, illness, violence, betrayal, and his own unchecked fury, arrived at the same time. And by the end, he was too exhausted to fight any of them. If you believe stories like this deserve to be remembered, please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Your engagement helps us uncover more hidden files, more lost legends, and more untold histories waiting to be brought into the light.